What if I told you the deadliest warrior in history never shouted, never bragged, and never even raised his voice? In fact, in over 60 life-or-death duels, he never lost once, and he won them not by swinging faster, but by thinking deeper. His name was Miyamoto Musashi, but this isn't just a story about a samurai. It's a story about you and the hidden war we all face every day. The battles you fight at work, in your family, in your mind. You don't need a sword to win them. You need what Musashi had, the power to remain calm while everyone else loses control. Today, I'll reveal the 4 mental strategies Musashi used to dominate every confrontation, and how you can apply them instantly in your own life. But first, let me ask you something. When someone yells at you, what happens inside your body? If you're like most people, your muscles tense, your heart races, and before you know it, you're swept away in a storm of emotion. That's no accident. That's the trap. But Musashi, he saw through it. And once you do too, you'll never see confrontation the same way again. Let's begin. Have you ever walked into a room and without saying a word, someone made everyone else pause? Not by shouting, not by flexing, but by simply being there, calm, grounded, and quietly powerful. There's something unnerving about that kind of presence. It's like standing in front of a storm that hasn't broken yet. And the silence? That's what makes it more dangerous than thunder. We often think the loudest person in the room is the most powerful, but history tells a different story. Miyamoto Musashi never shouted across a battlefield. He didn't taunt his enemies. He didn't put on a show. He just stood still, quiet, watching, while his opponents unraveled before they even lifted their swords. Why? Because true power doesn't come from noise. It comes from control, and this kind of control, the ability to remain unshaken in the face of chaos, isn't just for ancient warriors. It's for you. When your boss criticizes you unfairly, when your partner throws words in anger, when a stranger insults you online, in those moments, your reaction becomes your weapon. And the calmest person in the conflict, they hold the most power. This is where Musashi's mastery begins, not with a sword, but with the mind. So let's take our first step into his world and explore the first mental principle that made him unbeatable, even before the fight began. It's called emotional distance. Long before he was feared, Miyamoto Musashi was forgotten. He was born in a remote Japanese village, abandoned by his mother, and raised by a father who was more warrior than parent. But even that didn't last. By the age of 7, Musashi was left to fend for himself. Alone in the wild, armed with nothing but silence and a wooden sword. There were no teachers, no mentors, no comfort, only cold winds, empty nights, and the slow, brutal shaping of a soul that would one day become steel. Most people break in solitude. Musashi became unbreakable. He trained without instruction. He fought without mercy. His first duel? He was 13, and he killed a grown samurai. But here's the thing. Musashi didn't become invincible because he was born gifted. He became unstoppable because hardship didn't harden him. It clarified him. While others trained their bodies, he trained his mind. He realized early, the battlefield is not out there. It's in here, in the space between impulse and control. Solitude taught him that strength isn't the absence of fear. It's the ability to remain still in the face of it. It was in those quiet, forgotten years that Musashi forged his greatest weapon, his inner world. And that weapon would only grow sharper when paired with the first principle of his philosophy, the one we're about to uncover. It's called emotional distance, and it changes everything about how we confront the chaos around us. Picture this. You're in traffic. Someone cuts you off. Your chest tightens, your jaw clenches, and before you know it, you're yelling. Not at them, really, but at the storm raging inside you. Sound familiar? It's in moments like these that we lose ourselves. Not to the situation, but to the emotions it triggers. And this is the trap Musashi understood better than anyone. He saw that in battle, the first to lose control was the first to lose the fight. So he developed a simple but profound discipline: emotional distance. Now, don't confuse this with coldness or suppression. Musashi didn't deny his fear. He didn't pretend he wasn't angry. He just didn't become those feelings. He practiced watching them rise, like clouds passing across the sky, acknowledging them but not grabbing hold. When he felt rage, he didn't say, "I am angry." He said, "I am feeling anger." That small shift? It's everything. Because in that space, between you and the emotion, lies your power. And here's the beautiful part. You don't have to be a samurai to use this. Next time someone criticizes you, don't react. Pause. And say silently, "I notice that I'm feeling hurt. I notice frustration arising." This act of naming creates space. And in that space, you regain choice. It won't stop the emotion, but it will stop the emotion from hijacking your mind. Modern psychologists call this affect labeling. Neuroscientists have proven it reduces amygdala activity, the fear center of your brain, and increases clarity. Musashi knew it intuitively centuries ago. He never fought from impulse, he fought from intention. Because when you learn to observe your emotions instead of obeying them, you stop being a puppet and start becoming a master. And that mastery, it's what allowed him to walk into every duel with calm, even when the world around him was chaos. Now, imagine having that same calm before a tense conversation, before a hard decision, before a moment you usually dread. It starts with one question: what am I feeling? And what happens if I don't let it decide for me? Emotional distance doesn't mean not caring. It means caring wisely. And once you claim that space inside, you're ready for the next principle, the one that made Musashi win fights before they even began. Let's talk about anticipatory awareness. Musashi didn't win by chance. He won because by the time the first sword was drawn, he already knew the outcome. Let me take you to his most legendary duel. Sasaki Kojiro, famous for his lightning-fast strikes and his absurdly long sword, was feared across Japan. The fight was set. A crowd gathered. Tension hung in the air. But Musashi was late, deliberately. He showed up slowly, calmly carving a wooden sword on the way, slightly longer than Kojiro's. By the time he stepped onto the beach, Kojiro was already boiling with rage. And that was the point. Musashi had studied him, his vanity, his impatience, his signature moves. He knew that Kojiro's greatest strength was also his weakness: ego. When the duel began, Musashi was already 2 steps ahead, and he ended it with one strike. No wasted motion, no wasted emotion. That's anticipatory awareness. It's not about being psychic. It's about pattern recognition. Musashi understood something modern psychologists now confirm. Humans are predictable when under pressure. Anger makes us impulsive. Fear makes us avoidant. Insecurity makes us overcompensate. So what did he do? He studied his opponents. Not just their swords, but their posture, their breath, their eyes. And here's how you can do the same. Before your next difficult conversation, pause for 30 seconds. Ask yourself 3 questions. 1. What is this person's likely emotional state? 2. What do they actually want from this interaction? 3. What are the 3 most likely reactions they might have? Write them down if you have to. Because when your brain knows what might come, it doesn't panic, it prepares. This is what FBI hostage negotiators do before every conversation. They map emotional profiles, review past patterns, and rehearse scenarios, not to control others, but to avoid being controlled by surprise. Anticipation brings clarity, and clarity is power. So before you react, prepare. Before you speak, study. Before you step in, zoom out. Because when you know the storm is coming, you can build shelter before it hits. Now, let's take it one step further. What if you could not only anticipate your opponent, but also calm your own chaos in the heat of the moment? That's where the third principle comes in: strategic breathing. There's something most people never notice in a confrontation. It's not the shouting, not the fists, it's the breathing. Because the moment fear hits, the breath changes. It gets sharp, shallow, uneven, and that's when the mind begins to spiral. Musashi saw this centuries ago. He observed that the quickest way to spot weakness in an opponent wasn't in their grip, it was in their breath. And so he mastered the most underrated weapon of all: strategic breathing. While others lost control, he inhaled, held, exhaled, deliberately, calmly, because he understood something science would prove hundreds of years later: control your breath and you control your brain. Neuroscientists now know that slow, conscious breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the part of your body responsible for calm and clarity. It reduces cortisol, slows the heart, and clears the fog of emotion. Think about it. When you're anxious before a meeting, nervous before a phone call, angry during an argument, your breath holds the key. So what did Musashi do? Before a decisive move, he'd take one conscious breath. Inhale through the nose for 4 seconds. Hold for a moment. Exhale through the mouth for 6 seconds. Simple, intentional, transformative. You can do this right now. Let's try it. Together. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again and again. Feel it? That's not just oxygen. That's power returning to your body. Because while the world spins out of control, your breath is the one thing you always own. Musashi knew that calm wasn't an accident. It was a choice, a ritual, a rhythm. And when his breath was in sync, his sword followed. In your world, the sword may be your voice, your decision, your response. But the breath behind it, that's what gives it strength. Now that you've learned to calm the chaos inside, it's time to direct that calm with intention. Let's explore the fourth and final principle: purposeful action. Let's be honest. Most of us don't fight to solve problems. We fight to protect our pride. We say we want resolution, but what we really want is to be right, to win, to be heard louder. And in the heat of that battle, we lose something far more important than the argument. We lose ourselves. Musashi never made that mistake. He didn't fight to prove he was better. He fought only when it aligned with a clear, conscious objective. He wrote, "The warrior must not intend to attack first, but rather remain focused on his greater objective." For Musashi, every strike served a purpose. Every movement was grounded in intention. There was no wasted action, because there was no inflated ego. And this is where most of us fall. We enter conflicts not knowing what we truly want. And so, the conversation spirals, from one issue to every old resentment, to things that were never meant to be said. You've been there, haven't you? A discussion that started with a simple misunderstanding ends in silence, tears, slammed doors. Why? Because the purpose was lost. Musashi's answer? Always define your aim before you act. So here's the practice. Before you walk into that difficult conversation with your boss, your partner, your friend, pause and ask yourself, what is my real goal here? Answer it in one sentence. I want to resolve this without more damage. I want to express my truth without disrespect. I want to protect my peace. Then, repeat it to yourself during the conversation. This becomes your anchor, your North Star, the thread that keeps you from unraveling when emotions pull hard. And no, having a purpose doesn't make you robotic, it makes you wise. Because now, your emotions aren't leading the charge, they're working for your mission. That's what separates a true warrior from a reckless fighter. And here's the twist. When you act with intention, you often don't need to act at all. Sometimes, the most powerful move is no move. Sometimes, not reacting is the greatest display of strength. Musashi mastered this, and in doing so, he transcended battle altogether. Because in the end, it was never about defeating others. It was about mastering himself. And that mastery, it leads us into something deeper, a way of life that reaches far beyond the battlefield. Let's step into the philosophy behind the sword, and what Musashi can still teach us about the chaos we live in today. By now, you might think Musashi was just a brilliant fighter, but he was more than that. Long after he put down the sword, he picked up the brush and began writing about the deeper battle, not the battle of blade versus blade, but the one between impulse and awareness, ego and clarity, reaction and wisdom. You see, Musashi wasn't just a warrior, he was a philosopher, a monk in armor, a mirror for the human mind. He understood something few ever do. To master combat is to master the self. And this mastery, this quiet, unwavering presence, has been echoed across centuries and continents. In Buddhism, it's called non-identification, the idea that you're not your thoughts, you're not your anger, you're the awareness behind them. In Taoism, it's Wu Wei, effortless action, the ability to flow with life instead of forcing it. Musashi embodied both, without ever naming them. When chaos erupted around him, he stood still. When enemies provoked, he didn't respond with ego, he responded with strategy. And in doing so, he revealed a truth that feels more relevant now than ever, because today we are constantly under attack, not by swords, but by opinions, noise, distractions, expectations. Social media shouts for attention, politics divide us, traffic tests us, loved ones unintentionally wound us. And through it all, we are tempted to react, to defend, to strike back. But Musashi would say, if you know why you fight, you'll also know when not to. Because not every storm deserves your energy. Not every argument deserves your voice. The strongest man in the room is often the one who chooses silence, not from fear, but from wisdom. And that silence, it changes everything. Because once you stop needing to control others, you begin to control yourself. And when you control yourself, the world can no longer pull you apart. This is Musashi's ultimate teaching. Not how to win battles, but how to stop needing them. Now, if that's not power, what is? Let's bring this home together, because the final step is yours, and it begins in the quietest place of all, within. Take a breath with me, right now, just one. Inhale, hold, exhale. That breath was a choice, a quiet rebellion against the noise, and that's where it all begins. You don't need to become a samurai. You don't need a sword or a battlefield. Your life is already full of battles. With your health, your past, your relationships, your own mind. But here's the truth. Musashi discovered centuries ago, you don't rise above the chaos by fighting harder. You rise above it by going deeper into yourself. So today, I want to challenge you. The next time someone provokes you, criticizes you, dismisses you, don't react. Observe, feel the emotion, and name it. I notice that I'm feeling angry. I notice fear rising. I notice a part of me wanting to defend. Then breathe. 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. And before you speak, ask yourself, what is my purpose here? What outcome do I want, not just for me, but for this moment? Because that space between trigger and response is where you take your power back. You will notice something strange happen. People will stop trying to pull you into their chaos because they'll feel your calm, your clarity, your grounded presence. And that presence, it's contagious, it's magnetic, it's healing. You become the eye of the storm, not tossed around by life, but centered within it, like Musashi. And just like him, you'll realize something even more powerful. Many of the battles you thought you had to fight were never real to begin with. They were happening only inside you. So here's what I want you to do next. Think of one conflict in your life right now, something unresolved, something that stirs you up. And comment below, I choose calm. That's it. Not a rant, not a story, just 3 words. Because sometimes, the smallest declarations create the biggest shifts. I'll be reading every one of them. And rooting for you. This is your path now, not of force, but of focus, not of domination, but of deep, unshakable presence. You are not just someone who survives battles. You are someone who transcends them. And that is true power.